Thank you.
Any other nominations? Okay, last call for nominations. All right, Leah Main, Chair. Leah Main,
Thank you.
welcome to the CSLAC.
To the slack.
Welcome back to the SLAC. Okay, I will hand over this meeting to Chairman.
You know, I don't think we're gonna need a computer. And we can, or you can. I'll call for a 5-minute recess.
Hey, just checking in. What are we waiting for? It's 1:20.
Oh, okay, yeah, I was waiting for the indication that 5 minutes was up. We're ready? Everybody ready? Okay.
Okay. We're back from recess. Thank you for your confidence in me. It will take a little bit for me to get up to speed after a 1-year hiatus, but I really appreciate this opportunity to to serve as your chair on the Community Sustainable Living Advisory Committee once again. And so we will now commence the regular meeting. We acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we're meeting today. I would call for adoption of the agenda. Director Popoff and seconded by Director Cunningham. Any additions? Any late items?
Procedural question,
Yes?
just
Go ahead.
checking in as chair, who's monitoring chat for those online? Or how do you want us to propose our questions?
Shelley, can you monitor? Shelley, you will monitor chat?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that. I will call for counter to the recommendation that we adopt the agenda. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is adopted. And the next item is the receipt of minutes from the December 12th meeting. Can I have a mover and a seconder?
They're just received.
Oh, okay.
Report already, Chair.
Okay. They are received. See, I'm rusty. And item 9, staff reports. Item 9.1 for information update on sustainability service projects and areas of activity. And I will turn it over to Paris for that.
Thank you, through the chair. So just looking at the CSLAC staff update, if you go to page 2, you'll see a summary of the work that has happened from January to February of this year, noting that much of December was allocated to holiday time. So the updates include the percentage of time allocated. Again, my time continues to be largely dedicated to the climate action strategy. And the work on the draft climate action plan, but there was work in other areas as well. Some communication with the new executive director for the Food Policy Council and working on an update to the board. That should come later this spring. From watershed governance, no updates at this time. From Slocan Lake and Partnership, the steering committee continues to meet to work on the terms of reference. And the Kootenay Lake Partnership is active and underway and reports through RAC. The rural grid resilience, no updates at this time, but is active and underway. There's of course admin time that's allocated, and then climate action strategy, the climate action plan, as I mentioned, and the regional invasive species plan. The regional working group met for the first time. Director Vandenberghe is chair, and a report is coming to the board on summary of activities and an update, and with likely a request to continue. If committee members turn to page 3, and there is a presentation that provides more detail on this work plan, but as you can see, this is the proposed work plan for 2024. Most activities are ongoing and active and confirmed, and there's not a lot of new activities that are happening. In fact, there's none, other than the project management of either of the proposed funding streams that if the committee agrees to go forward with them. There is one item that isn't included in this update, and that's an error on my part, but I want to bring the committee's attention to it. If you turn to the left page 13 of the packet, and you'll see that there's a regional active and low carbon transportation strategy row. And then there's a resolution that directs staff to prepare a detailed project budget to investigate regional active transportation solutions. And this is something that we identified not last year, but the previous year, so it might be new to some of the new members. It's something that has been happening in the background. There was a group that met in the summer of 2022, and that helped clarify a little bit of what the potential role could be for our DCK. And then, of course, it was a thread through the ongoing investigation or through the open houses and all the community engagement. And there might be, as we roll out, there might be additional work that comes about. So mostly I'm just bringing this to the attention that this is one of those background items that while we're not seeing it, it hasn't closed and it's still active in our work plan, my work plan. And I will add it for future for updates as well.
Okay, and that will be able to fit into the 2024 work plan without moving too many trials around?
Thank you. Yeah, for the consideration. Yes. Yeah, it will be able to fit into the work plan. It is one of those items that continues at a very low level. And it is also one of the pilot items that was identified as part of the funding approval that came last year through community engagement, was looking at how to support the development of this project plan.
Thank you. Director Watson has a question.
Thank you. I'll just make a comment on the kind of, sorry, we have two things that are very similar. So I'm going to hold my work plan questions till after that presentation. And then this question is just related. It's more of feedback on trying to figure out what we call the document, your overall kind of department review, everything that's happening. Just to note that in the original invasive species plan, we have a motion in there that was actually, it was acted on in the motion, but when it came back to us, we did not act on it. So I had to thank you very much for staff for following up on that. But the regional invasive species pilot for the Good Neighborhood program, we did not pursue. So I think we should include that updated motion to indicate that, because it caused me quite a bit of confusion when they applied to the Conservation Service and I thought it was the same program. And then the rest of my questions on the work plan, I'll hold until that item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Watson. And while we're on the regional invasive species, item 5 under that plan, 64623, appoint the following 2 directors to the Regional Invasive Species Working Group for a term to end September 2024, and there are no names there. So I am at a loss who we would have appointed.
Thank you. Through the chair, it was Director Hewitt and Director Vandenberghe.
Thank you.
And yes, thank you for both of those notes. I'll correct those.
Director Jackman?
Yeah, I'm wondering maybe I should hold until we get the other summaries. I had one question and I'll be busy with Paris said I have 2, but I'll wait until she's.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on the staff update? Okay. Director Vandenberghe.
Yes, thank you, and through the chair. I know that Amy's going to wait a little bit on the work plan, but a couple of things of interest for me. When we were at LGLA, one of the interesting presentations that we attended was the natural asset management plan. And while we were sitting in a group and chatting and that sort of thing, we found that there is one for RDCK. Although I came back and I cannot find it. Can you tell us where that document resides? And so that I may have access to it is the first question that I have, or the comment that I have. And I'll just go into my second one because it's also a document as well. In September 10th of 2022, prior to us newly elected getting on, therefore our e-scribe doesn't go back that far. In your work plan, you describe a regional active and low carbon transportation strategy as per the September 10th, 2022 report. Again, is that something that you can help me locate so that I can better understand, I guess, those 2 items? Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, yes. We've worked regarding the natural asset management plan. So the RDCK participated with Municipal Natural Asset Initiative, MNAI, on conducting a preliminary assessment for the Arrow Creek system in the Creston Valley. That is available. We can provide that. We also did some additional work on understanding the role that natural asset management planning could play with the RDCK, and we can share that as well. And we are also in the process of considering it as part of the WGI with the Weimar watershed system, whether or not we can actually conduct a full asset management plan with the Weimar water system. And so those are the 3 updates regarding natural asset management planning. And I can send them along to you, Director Vandenberghe.
And could I have a copy of those as well, please? Thank you.
We can send it to everybody.
Yeah.
And then regarding the regional active transportation and low carbon strategy, that yes, there was a report that provided some context to the resolution, and we can send that along as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paris. Okay. Anybody else on the actions and work, on the actions? We will get to the work plan. Okay. That was item 10.1. Item 10.2 for review, the financial statement update and review. I will turn this over to staff.
Thank you very much, through the chair. So this is a presentation that provides the work plan and an opportunity for discussion, but also provides a little bit of background on the role of the Community Sustainable Living Advisory Committee, and also on where the committee has come to sit on projects and programs. So it's, and it might be review for those that are familiar, and hopefully not. Anyhow, hopefully helpful review. If we can go to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, so we'll provide an overview how CSLAC projects are funded, the 2024 work plan, and then also a review of CSLAC as a whole. The objectives, and these are what are outlined in both the terms of reference and also the bylaw, is that the opportunity for CSLAC is to discuss and review projects that are relevant at a regional level, but may be beginning in a very specific local level. And they typically fall into 5 areas: food security, agriculture, climate change initiatives, affordable housing strategies, and economic development, not so much of length, but that is part of our overall mandate. And then energy, water, and and housing, which I already mentioned. Our role is to, as a committee, is to provide input on these initiatives as they come forward to the board and make recommendations, and then also to receive and feedback from the community and provide that conduit to the board and to community. And then one example is that we initiate and participate in the climate action strategy and the state of climate action, although they began here, they sit at the board level, and though we have tended to provide in the past context for them, though not in the current future, or not in the current moment. Next slide, please. In terms of that role of investigating and understanding ideas and projects that could be developed for regional benefit, there are 2 avenues. One is through projects, which are short one-off initiatives that have a distinct beginning and end. It may be an idea, it may be something that has long stood as a possibility that we want to follow through on, and they tend to be novel, and they're focused on supporting rural resilience. If there's merit to the idea, and if they develop beyond a pilot or an investigation, then there is the potential for them to grow into programs that can be multi-year initiatives. To this date, we've done that with the Food Policy Council. That's the only example of where we took an idea of something and developed it, and now it's a program that stands on its own. But it does provide that model does exist. Next slide, please. This table provides a little bit more information about the distinction between projects or investigations and programs, and where we have typically provided the support is in core funding. And one that we recognize is that often, and increasingly so for nonprofits, particularly in the environmental field, core funding is challenging to access. And so this has been a support that CSLAC has provided, and also that once it reaches this level, the project idea, it usually graduates, quote unquote, to general admin. The limit requests on projects, and this is what you'll be familiar from the last meeting, is that we typically recommend that applicants or proponents don't apply for requests more than 10,000 a year, and that there is 25,000 that's allocated on an annual basis within the CSLAC budget for distribution at the discretion of the committee. Next slide. This provides some examples. So again, focus areas: climate action, energy, housing, food and agriculture, and water. This is where we tend to focus our activities, and these are some of the examples of work where CSLAC has had a direct role in initiating and where it has developed into another initiative. The ones with the stars are noted that they did start a few years ago, and they continue to be in that investigation place. And that's fine, that the project realm can last a few years. Other ones have begun and completed, like the timber deadstock bioenergy study. That was a study that we initiated. And the East Shore geothermal GIS study, we supported that on 2 levels, and it did continue. And at the last update, there is a report that will be soon ready for the committee to receive and learn about. Next slide, please. So in terms of the 2024 work plan, what often is the opportunity and where this would arise is that we would be discussing what new projects could be happening in 2024. We do have 2 proposals on the table, and to note, the reason that we have 2 and not 3, as was previously discussed in December, is that the Friends of Kootenay Lake have gone on a hiatus, and it's undefined. And so we have withdrawn, with their knowledge, their proposal, their request for funding. So we have 2 proposals on the table for funding for 2024. They're both in the realm of project management, so very independent from the RDCK. And all other time, because of the involvement with the climate action plan, is allocated for 2024. So now we're looking at projects for 2025, and I would encourage committee members to consider what might be of interest so that we can start to discuss and evaluate them in the summer months. Next slide, please. This provides some more detail on the work plan on my work plan, and it does include, so you can see where in the water category, we have quite a bit of activity. Some are not as active, but they could become active in the near future. And then there's 2 projects that are highlighted in orange there that are included in this category and that will receive decision today. Next slide, please. And so it just concludes that there's a full allocation of time for my time. Again, that may shift if RDCK climate action shifts in the near future. And then there's 2 project funding requests, and that leaves, if the committee agrees with staff recommendation, that leaves $5,000 available for projects that may emerge over the course of the year. Next slide, please. And so just to review it again, there's 2 types of activities with the overarching idea that part of CSLAC's role is to provide that space container to investigate ideas that support rural resilience. I would note that this is a very unique function amongst local governments. I regularly get requests from other local governments on how we're able to do the work that we're able to do, because they don't necessarily have dedicated service models, and so they're not able to pursue investigations in the same way that we are via Service 105 and this committee. Last slide, please. And so just so, to give you a sense, so since 2017, even though the service has been in existence since 2012, since 2017, we've initiated dozens of projects and have been able to leverage significant amount of funding into the community. And I'd say as well, the other role is that we've been able to investigate ideas that do not have another place that they can be investigated, but have served significant benefit for residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Paris. So I would open the floor to questions on this last presentation. Director Jackman?
Sure, I guess Director Watson, I'm sure Watson is also deferring to this, but I will jump right in. So, my question is, looking at your report about sort of what's completed in terms of projects and what's ongoing, and Paris, through the chair, Paris, you did refer to it. The geothermal is very much ongoing. And in terms of leverage, that $20,000 has produced more than around $250,000 value. Expertise, testing, mapping, drone work, specialized equipment, monitoring, lab analysis, and experts across BC and nationally looking at this. So, there's two things that need to come out of this to move ahead. And I do hope we'll have a spot that we'll hear about this phase 3 results. The one is I have talked very generally to FCM about what the GMF could do for a project like this. And had a good conversation with a lot of people about what they could fund and when they could fund it. I would like, not anything anyone has to decide now, we've got a few months, but I'd like some staff assistance on wading through the funding opportunities with the Green Municipal Fund and focusing and ask, because they do have some large funding opportunities. The second thing that we haven't talked about since we embarked on this is Salmo and the Cusp, because all three locations very similar in terms of geothermal potential. And what we learned through the hundreds and hundreds of hours of expertise we've had is what are the best metrics to check or test for to zero in way quicker than what it took to scope out properly. So at some point, I'd like to see that come back on the agenda. I don't know if you'll need a community champion to get as far as we got, but I suspect it's less important than having Gord McMahon and our other champion, Dan, here, because there's so much provincial interest in this now. I suspect you're gonna get university and provincial geothermal people jumping on it. More than a champion, they'll need a contact in each of those two locations if the communities are interested. So I don't wanna see that just kind of fade away, because there's a lot of potential.
Yeah, good input, Director Jackman. And before I turn it over to you, Paris, I would like to make a comment, which is that in the last 2 days, Green Municipal Fund has announced a new intake process and another $500 million in funding for climate resilience and adaptation and mitigation. So I think we're poised really, on the point of the pencil to investigate GMF. So having said that, Paris, I'll turn the rest of the response over to you.
Thank you, through the chair. Great to hear, and I do have an email to respond to Gord and provide some further information or some further context. I think in terms of our response, it would be great to meet with him, understand how to develop a project scope that could be brought to the committee for consideration. And that sounds like, just continuing it as in some way, but recognizing what would be involved would be important.
Today's supplemental.
Yes.
The one thing that really keyed in with me in this last round is we were talking drilling 500 to 1,000 meters or maybe more, which isn't that much for the Bluebell mine. They're way under the lake. But you need very specialized equipment. I mean, we're not going to build tunnels. We're just going to drill it. And the rigs and the access to rigs is limited. You're talking Alberta type rigs. But we may only need 100 or 200 meters. Now we're talking about water well drilling stuff that is more readily sourced. So this few $1 million of drilling program might be entirely different. And so that's what I find so much more exciting, that not only is it potential, but you don't have to go to the depth that might just make it almost insurmountable to even get a rig out to test. So it's looking so much better to me. I'll leave my other questions about active transportation, but let others go.
Okay,
Can I have a supplemental response just on here?
sure.
Just on this, through the chair. Just when we look at the work plan, we're at 100% already prepares this time. So can we say that we're gonna look at how that would balance to the other projects? Just so that we make sure that we're able to deliver on the things that we've already said. And, yeah, just wanted to add that part, because something has to come off the plate if we're gonna add more onto a plate.
Understood, and I'm looking more for guidance on which of these funding streams, there's too many with FCM. Just kind of point me.
And we do appreciate your understanding and facility with the technical aspects of a project like that. So thanks for your comments. Did you have any other
Well,
comments?
just supplemental, Chairman, I think it's a great example again of how a project is successful. And so then how do we continue to manage it and support it? And how does it need to be ushered through and with continued support? So thank you.
Great. So I do have a speakers list, Director Watson, Vandenberghe, and then Cunningham. So Director Watson.
Thank you. I'm gonna echo. Sorry, hopefully that's not for everybody. I have a couple of, mostly an overall observation. I appreciate being able to see the work plan in terms of where energy is going, because I did have the assumption that was verified through the Climate Action Plan report on the board agenda, which is most of your time as the Sustainability Coordinator Paris is being taken up by the Climate Action Plan. And so we have delays on these other projects. My two primary questions are, how did we go down that road without recognizing that your plate was already full before enabling more coming onto your plate and these getting deferred? And then the second one is, obviously that means if we keep going as we're going, that we don't have the staff we need to carry out everything we have on our plate. And two things with that. One is, are we anticipating a staff ask in the near future? And two, would we not be more wise to address what we've already put on our plate and not fund more grant-based projects and actually use those funds for the staffing to ensure we're keeping up with what we've put on our work plan? Those are my two questions.
Whichever one of you wants to.
Thank you, through the chair. We have attempted to be clear about the implications of redirecting focus to the climate action plan since we initially made the diversion in April and May of last year. And so while we have significant effort or significant support has been achieved with hiring of Donna Ditson and the Community Resilience Coordinator, there's still a level of complexity and a level of work that needs quite a bit of support. That said, I have been able to do work on other areas, and so it's not as it was during the open houses, and we are progressing in other ways, though it still takes a considerable amount of time. So in terms of the communications, we did try to make that explicit about what the trade-off was going to be, and it is to note that that CSLAC is underfunding that work as well, and that also the time is not being used in the same way on the other areas. I would also add that these other areas haven't been largely active. Fortunately, the watershed governance in particular, we've been waiting for the community to respond. And there may be changes in that in the near future as we head into a drought season and changes at the provincial level. So yeah, lots at play. And if the climate action plan is adopted in the near future or we get clear direction, then we'll move into implementation. And so the work on it will change.
Supplemental to Director Watson through the chair. Just adding on that, the short answer also to your question around additional staffing is no. We wouldn't be coming up with an ask. And the other part to that is the two projects that we're looking at from our assessment seem to be a low effort from our standpoint, if I've understood it correctly. Yeah, so it'd be project management. So we're not contracting side. The contracting side of it. So from a leading standpoint, the projects that Paris is involved in, like the climate action plan, take just a significantly different type of effort compared to projects that you're looking to fund.
Supplemental.
Go ahead, Director Watson.
Thank you. I'll leave the kind of budget questions till we get to the budget, but I do raise a concern that we're doing more than we really should with the capacity we have. And so it's a cautionary note to me. I feel like we have good intentions with this, but we overextend ourselves. And by default, we're not doing the best we could be doing. And when it comes to finances, we're really not being efficient. So that's just my comment on the overall work plan. I'm glad to see you're admitting there's no room for anything else in 2024. I'd be surprised if you said anything else. And my comments don't discount how hard you guys work. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying we're putting way more on the plate than we should be. Then my last question is just, I noted in the work plan, you have 2 projects under groundwater monitoring at 10,000 each, but my understanding from the asks is that there's only one for groundwater monitoring and the other one is the Elk Root Foundation.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, that was an error on my part. I was looking to update the second line and just left it blank. So it should say Regenerative Education Farm Project, and it's the Elk Root who is the proponent. So it's one with groundwater monitoring through Living Lakes, and then the second one is the Regenerative Education Farm Project.
And sorry, does that fall under water or would that be under food and agriculture?
Yes, good point. It would be under food and agriculture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you both for that clarification. Director Vandenberghe.
Yes, and thank you through the chair. Amy just asked pretty much the question I was going to ask, it kind of clarity. One of the items from our 7.1 of our minutes of last meeting, recipients dropped off. I didn't quite catch who that was. I understand it now. Thank you. But Paris, you did say we have $5,000 to allocate elsewhere. I want some clarity on that because these allocations were 8,300 and change each for 25,000 with 2 programs on that list. Number one, does the $8,300 change in terms of the value? And number 2, do we have to spend the money?
Thank you, through the chair. We're moving into the second item, but I'm happy to speak to it if the chair is.
Let's leave that question till that recommendation comes up. 10.2. Director Vandenberghe, I'll ask you to ask that question again when we come to the budget recommendation. And Director Cunningham.
Part of the Elephant Project, regenerative education got me. What exactly is regenerative education? Is that education on regenerating plants or the education? You understand? Please.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm happy to provide the project notes. I don't know necessarily about the choice of the title. The intent is to provide a learning opportunity on how to grow food in the Slocan Valley that would be replicated in other communities. And it's using regenerative growing practices, which are tend to be non-officially organic, but that do sustain the soil in a very proactive way. It's new language that has emerged as a sort of beside organic.
Rather than bleaching the soil and
Regenerative.
maybe it helps it regenerate, like clover, for example. I'm kidding. I can make my second one. We should, and it's a project that's going to last for how long? I mean, this is the year.
Same.
Projects are time limited.
Thank you, through the chair.
Okay.
In both cases, it's funding just for 1 year. The pilot for Elk Root, or the project for Elk Root, is a pilot for 1 year. If successful, then they'll seek funding, not necessarily from us, but for future years to continue the work.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, if I may, through the chair, has to do with the Wyman watershed. You mentioned that one was, I got a communication from you, which I forwarded to the Wyman water people.
Thank you, through the chair. We have heard from them. I'm not sure if it's in response to your forward, but mostly it's about applying for funding was my question, which we can just have to chat about afterwards.
Yeah.
Director Cunningham, can you speak up, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, okay, yes, the Farmer Watershed people have a number of ways of receiving funding, because of course they are a society, which gives them access that we don't necessarily have. And it's not that I want to turn them down, but maybe, good access. Thank you.
And I see that Director Weatherhead is online. Welcome to the meeting. Glad you could make it. Okay, so that was,
I did have one more, Chair. That's
okay, go ahead.
totally different from geothermal. Through the chair, to Paris, we did have a really good conversation about active transportation, that little easy, low-hanging fruit corridor from the Canyon Bridge to the edge of Erickson. We dropped from 100 kilometers an hour to 80, then we dropped slow to 60 for a bad corner in winter, and then back to 80 and then back to 60. Is there any way we can push that with the ministry, or have they ever come back? I mean, they just kind of blew it off. It's a perfect biking corridor that connects what, 1,000, a lot of people on the other side of that bridge. They go anywhere.
Thank you, through the chair. It's a great, so what for other committee members, what Director Jackman's referring to is in part of understanding what the role could be for the regional district in supporting active transportation. We met with residents from the Creston Valley to identify areas of concern where they travel frequently, where they would like to travel with bikes or walking, highlighted some areas of concern, and then provided some mapping of those areas and recommended that they navigate through the Ministry of Transportation. What I understand is that they received no response from the Ministry of Transportation. They did take it to the MLA. They also received no response from the MLA. Part of our continued work would be to try and understand how we can work with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure in another way, and possibly find some receptivity for these project ideas. Or not project ideas, but changes in speeds and changes in signage, because it was a fairly minimal ask.
So if I can't share the follow-up, because this is again where a little bit of understanding of what's worked elsewhere from our staff will go a long ways for advocacy. I mean, it's barely a mile. It's less than 2 kilometers that would make that corridor well connected. And that's something I like to think there's some flexibility in the plan. It'll push it. I mean, there were others, North to Window and Highway 21, Director Vandenberghe's area, much more complex. But this one was so easy. So I'd love to see it get a little push.
Yeah, and that's something to keep in mind as we get closer to UBCM, that putting together a slightly larger statement about active transportation opportunities and taking it to requesting a Modi audience at UBCM might be another prong of the advocacy. Director Tierney, did you have a comment?
Yes, before that was brought up at the public meeting that Paris had, the Galius contacted me when I first got in, and I did contact the district manager, who spoke with the engineer, and was told that they had assessed that area twice before, and as a result, they put in those flashing lights, and I explained to them that that hasn't done it. That there is a really bad blind corner there when traffic is coming from Creston, pulling into the pull-off lane and turning into Canyon. You can't see what's coming. And a lot of the vehicles that are pulling in there are large trucks that are coming into that mill right there. And I've seen a couple of real close calls this year. And I do think we need to highlight that as much as we can. Wondering whether the Highway 3 Corridor Committee whether it could be brought up at that committee, Kelly. And I understand that that committee does try to highlight concerns that are could be brought to Modi's attention. And I think that's another avenue we could try.
Good suggestions. So I'm going to call on Director Popoff for the first time and then Director Watson for the second time.
Thank you, Chair. This is for information purposes only, that something that might be coming up in the future when we're talking about active transportation. The corridor between Silverton and New Denver, the North Slocan Valley Trail Society is taking a second look at it. I think we've looked at it about 2 or 3 times, and it was very hard to determine whether something can be established, but we are going to be looking at it in the near future. So this is just informational.
Thanks for that, Director Popoff. Director Watson.
Thank you. I wasn't going to talk about transportation, but as I'm emailing about all the transportation issues we have, I first wanted to say that I want to stress caution over finding new projects for 2025 when we don't know what's happening with the climate action plan, and you again already have more on your plate than we can currently handle. So I think soliciting for more projects when we have no idea what's happening with the climate action plan is not super wise, is my opinion. I think we should hold out and see what happens with CAP and then all the other work we have before we start bringing in others. Because at the same time, one of the questions another director asked was, do we have to spend the money we allocate to grants? We do not. We don't have to spend any of that money. In fact, that money, in my opinion, should be redirected to dealing with what we need to deal with, which is already on our plate. But I also support the 2 projects that are on there, so I'm not going to debate them when they come up. So that was my first note. My second note was that regarding transportation, I'm really struggling with our geography. The more that I get into where expenses are, what the cost of things are, when you have a very rural, geographically sparse area, a lot of the things we talk about aren't relevant. They don't work. And so, active transportation, it's really great to hear that they could work in the cluster developments between rural municipalities. Awesome. Area D cannot even get roads plowed on time. There's people that cannot get ambulances to their houses, and Ministry of Transportation doesn't respond at all. So I just shared that from the perspective of being cognizant that where we are at in our servicing is like this, depending on where you are. And when it comes to new projects that are going to be heavily concentrated in the south end of our region, I need to be a little more blunt about how we participate in things that might not be actually benefiting Area D. And Area D is really struggling with baseline servicing. They're about to possibly pull landlines and there's no cell service. So it's a difficult discussion for me at times. I don't want to say that to impede other people from doing good work, but I think it's important for us to understand all of our areas and that some rural and remote areas are well behind any of these great new ideas. They're also pioneers in creating new ideas like the grid resilience program. So sometimes we got good ideas to throw back to.
Thanks for that, Director Watson. We do need to hear all the voices when we have these conversations. So unless there's anything more about the 2024 actions and work plan, we will go up to item 10.2 for review, CSLAC financial statement update and review. Okay.
Thank you, through the chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Great. Thank you. I just wanted, I would like to speak to the first item in the recommendation. There are 2 items, and Sangeeta will speak the second one, or speaks more broadly to the budget. So, and hopefully I'll be able to answer your questions, Director Vandenberghe, as well in my response. So, Friends of Kootenay Lake, which was the 3rd proponent, we had 3 proponents requesting funding from CSLAC, and they each requested $10,000 each, which was beyond the $25,000 allocation. And so there was a decision by the committee placeholders within the budget to divide the $25,000 evenly amongst the 3 proponents. Since Friends of Kootenay Lake is no longer a proponent, we have 2 applicants, and staff are recommending that we fund their full request at $10,000 each, which would be 20 of the $25,000, which would leave the $5,000 in the budget as a remainder for this year. As Director Watson said, there is no requirement by the committee to spend any of the funding. And so this is a full decision for the committee.
Okay. Do we have questions or comments on the amendment to the original motion?
I will move that motion. Discussion?
Okay. Okay. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll say.
Director Popoff and Director Tierney. Okay. So I have Director Weatherhead and then Director Vandenberghe. Director Weatherhead, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, this is just a question on this, what you were just speaking of, Paris, is that in the eScribe? I'm not finding the actual report on this. I'm just seeing some financials.
Go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. No, my apologies. There is no report that accompanies it. We did receive a report on the proponents last month, which outlines the projects and their requests. And there is nothing to accompany this.
Supplemental, do you mind, can you just repeat them for me again and I'll look it up?
Yes, through the chair, there was a report in December CSLAC meeting that outlined the 3 projects and their applications and their request for $10,000. And the amendment this time is to remove Friends of Kootenay Lake as a proponent and allocate 10,000, which is the original ask from the individual proponents, funding out of the 25,000.
And the other the other proponents is what I was just trying to get from you. Sorry.
Oh, my apologies. So the other 2 are Living Lakes, and Living Lakes has applied for the groundwater monitoring program. And then Elk Root Conservation has applied for the Regenerative Educational Community Food Garden. And it's the Friends of Kootenay Lake has been removed for the Kootenay Lake Watershed Monitoring Program.
Perfect. Thank you.
There was a clarification coming from Director Hewitt that the reports were actually in the October package, and it was only the resolutions that were in December, it seems.
Okay. Director Vandenberghe.
Right. Thank you, through the chair. I'm not in support of allocating of the 10,000 because we have it available. I'm having a problem with supporting the Elk Root initiative in itself. Regenerative farming principles are being used throughout my area, agriculture, small operations, market gardens. I don't see the benefit of this pilot. It's non-organic. I think maybe for me, it's important to fiscally reserve sometimes. And this is not a home run project for me. And so I can't support that at this time. The way the motion is untabled.
Okay, thank you for that. Director Graham.
Thank you, and sorry through the chair. I'm just trying to confirm that we're not moving, that we're not also talking about the second point that we're approving the 2024 budget, that we're only on point 1 and not on point 2, correct?
Yes. Correct.
Okay. Sorry, thank you. I just needed that clarification.
Yeah. Okay, so before we go to a vote and before we go to any more comments as well, I'm going to read the motion so that we're all really clear exactly what we're going. That the foregoing motion being that the board directs staff to include placeholders in the annual grant allocation of $25,000 in Community Sustainable Living Service F5 in the draft 2024 budget for the following projects: Columbia Basin Groundwater Monitoring Program, Living Lakes, $8,333. Kootenay Lake Watershed Monitoring Program, Friends of Kootenay Lake, $8,333. Regenerative Educational Community Food Garden, Elk Root Conservation, $8,333. Be amended to read that the board directs staff to include the annual grant allocation of $20,000 in Community Sustainable Living Service S105 in the 2024 budget for the following projects: Columbia Basin Groundwater Monitoring Program, Living Lakes, $10,000. Regenerative Educational Community Food Garden, Elk Root Conservation, $10,000. That is the motion that's on the floor. Director Popoff?
Yeah, so if I can speak to the motion.
Yes.
Is, we had a delegation here, October, I believe. And because of our policy, we could not move the recommendation in October. So it was deferred till the December meeting. The report provided in October and delegation, et cetera. So we were all aware of what we were supporting. Because we only had $25,000 there, the ask from each organization was $10,000 each. So we decided at that time to split the $25,000, basically allowing $8,333 for each organization. Since then, the Kootenay Lake Watershed monitoring program was dropped, from what I understand. It was taken off the table. So we still had $25,000 left at the recommendation of staff, utilize $20,000 of that and fully fund the applications that they had for back in October. So, and we have $5,000 left over. Granted, we don't have to spend all that money. The $5,000 can be carried forward to next year, but we are now amending our resolution to allocate $10,000 for the two projects that we initially approved for $8,332. So in response to Director Vandenberghe's comment about about the Elk Root, this is a template, not only for the Creston area, but it's a template for all of the regional district, Area D, and all the other areas that want to follow that template for food security and regenerative food policy that we're going to do. And it will be useful for the rest of the regional district. It might not be useful for the Creston area, but it would be available for the rest of the district. Now, our terms of reference allows us to allocate $25,000 for projects. And this is what we're doing in accordance with our terms of reference. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Popoff. Manager Sudan?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, we wouldn't carry the 5,000 over to 2025. Instead, we would just allocate 20,000 in the budget for 2024 if you approve the two projects.
I have Director Weatherhead and then Director Vandenberghe. Director Weatherhead and okay, Director Cunningham and then Director Jackman, each for the first time on this topic, and then Weatherhead and Vandenberghe. So Director Cunningham.
I don't know if it's point of order or not. Can we change the word recommendation to recommendations to show that there are two separate ones? Right there in the heading.
Yeah.
It's a simple one, but it certainly makes it clear that one and two are not the same thing.
Yes, done.
Thank you.
Director Jackman.
Yes, thanks. So, we're not rescinding something, we're modifying something, and I want to make sure we don't split hairs. What's in the back of my mind is we have signaled to an organization who is looking for matching funding the expectation that they would receive $8,333 for either project, sort of as a baseline. So if somebody's thinking now is not the time to spend the money, I would hate to see us vote to go even a penny below that. Because we've set firm expectations a couple months ago to a couple organizations who may have had multiple other applications. I'm thinking more of the Elk Root, where they said pending. They may have confirmed funding, and that may now have been the condition that allowed them to get other money. So I don't think we should be talking about walking back to 83-33. Beyond that, we're splitting hairs. So I'm good with the 10 and 10. I don't want to see 0 because I think that would be acting in very poor faith as an organization. So if anybody wants to come up with a number between 83-33 and 10 that has some kind of meaningful backing to it, I'd be interested in hearing what the basis of that recommendation would be. Otherwise, I'm good with it.
Thank you. Director Weatherhead, then Director Vandenberghe, and then Director Watson.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm just trying to understand how quickly after when you give these grants to these organizations, at what point does staff have to start working on this, or is it the organization that does the work and just basically delivers back to the staff? I'm just wondering how soon into the work queue what would this look like?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once the final budget is approved on March 31st, then beginning in April, we would go into contracting. And so in this case, we are not delivering the project, we're simply providing funding for the project. And so it's the extent of our role is to provide a contract that administers the funding to the organization.
Thank you.
Supplemental, if I may?
Yes, yes.
That work is not necessarily done by Paris. It's usually administrative staff putting those agreements together.
Thank you. Director Vandenberghe.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm unmuted. I'm just going to further say that regenerative farming practices and principles are already being done by agriculture in all shapes and sizes. I don't see the value that this is going to add to this pilot. To me, it's just an opportunity to fund something because we can. And I think that this year is a time for fiscal restraint. And I don't agree with just because we have the money, we need to be spending it. There has to be value in coming. And if there's the type of work that they're proposing to do, if it was to benefit the whole, that would be great. But this is already being practiced. It's not new. Well, it's not new in the sense that it's a type of farming that is being explored currently as we speak by all layers. So I will not support.
Thank you. Paris?
If I may, thank you through the chair. Just a note of clarification that while the practices are using regenerative, or there is the language of regenerative in the title, the emphasis of the project is very much on providing food to vulnerable communities and those equity deserving communities. And so the pilot is more about how to provide food and distribute food across the region in an equitable manner. It's an exercise of food security from using regenerative practices. And that's the piloting, and it has strong support from local farmers that could also use the mechanisms that the project is piloting to distribute their excess food as well.
Thank you, Paris. And so Director Watson.
Thank you. The committee that repeats everything multiple times. Just because we're still talking about this, I'm going to add in my few cents. I do agree with the fiscal responsibility. This is a very tough year on all fronts. However, I also note that we did provide conditional approval through everything that we approve as a grant or service in advance of the full budget meeting in March is always conditional. It's never just, you're done, you're good to go. And so hopefully any communication with either of these organizations was it's been put in our draft budget plan, not in our, it's approved. So it's a clear distinction to make to anyone who's applying to us for funding through the budget, through the financial plan. That being said, I do want to note regenerative agriculture. Interestingly, I was a part of the very first certified organic organization in BC called BACARA, which was BC Association of Regenerative Agriculture. It's where I first started farming 20 years ago, maybe longer. And regenerative agriculture is definitely, when we talk about soil sequestration and what we should be doing with carbon, for me, this is the carbon plan. This is everything we should be doing, is in soil structure, it's in building the microorganisms. This is bang for buck on all fronts. I don't care what kind of car you drive. This is how we do climate change. And so I very much support the efforts of what they're doing. We knew food security is even more important this year. So with all of that being said, if we were at the point of not allocating any funding at this point, I would say don't. We need to be very fiscally mindful this year. But because we have given them the heads up that they're in the draft plan, I do support this at this time. But what I want to say is we should not be opening up the intake for 2025 until after we've discussed the climate action plan and where we're going with it. So it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but it's committee. So I think that's what we do.
We certainly do. Okay, so I believe everybody who wished to speak on this topic has had an opportunity. So I'm going to call the question. I will, because we have people online, I will assume that we are all in favor, and I will ask for those opposed. Director Graham and Director Vandenberghe are opposed.
Yeah.
And I think in committee we record, do we not?
No, we don't. We don't record opposed in committee. You'll have your chance to get recorded on this when it comes to board. So those are the only two who are opposed. It is carried. Thank you all for your discussion on this. And we will move to item 2 under 10.2, that the board approved the 2024 budget for Community Living Advisory Service S105, and I will let staff present.
So some key highlights of the budget in 2024, specifically on the Kootenay Lake Partnership. You'll see in the draft that you received, there's a big lump of funding, 106,000.
What line are you on?
Sorry, on the line marked 43020 grants.
Yep.
2024, that is mostly Kootenay Lake Partnership, who has acquired grant funding from various sources. I can name the sources. Tech has contributed 43,000 in total towards the Kootenay Lake Partnership. Then you've got Real Estate Foundation, who's contributed total $54,023 dollars towards the KLP projects, and we received the first installment, which is $48,621. And then there's 10,000 from Columbia Power Corporation. There's 10,000 from the service, this S105. The board passed a resolution, I believe it was in 2021, and the resolution number is 190, where they committed to fund Kootenay Lake Partnership up to 2025. So this is 10,000 from the service going into that. And plus the Tanaka received funding through the Local Conservation Fund in 2023. That funding is also in the budget and is allocated towards this project. There was a small deficit that the Kootenay Lake Partnership had last year, so that's been taken out of the overall budget already to balance it out, so that's all good. And then the other projects that we're running that we have funding for in the budget is 25,000 for the watershed governance on Duck Creek, which has not yet launched. That was committed a few years ago, and that's been carried forward to this year. There's also some money from the SLRP, Slocan Lake and River Partnership, That's been carried forward. And then some funding from Grid Resilience, Links Grid Resilience. A small amount of funding there carried forward to help continue supporting that initiative. So in total, those are the projects currently in play. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I believe Director Vandenberghe has questions. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. If there's a report that you're reading or that there's available, I don't have it. I have two, they're both S105 and they're spreadsheets. And one of them has some notes off to the side. So is there a report that I'm missing that you have just read from?
No, I'm reading from the same budget. The notes that you're seeing are in I'm just speaking because I know this budget. And I'm letting you know that these are the projects that are currently in the budget. What you're seeing is a summary of the grants. So what I'm communicating is how that summary total is being spread out. So the grants that were received by the Kootenay Lake Partnership, for example, in total, they are 120,000 for 2024. And there's more money coming in 2025 for the Kootenay Lake Partnership, which are just holdbacks from the grantors. So I can see that in my budget because it's broken out by, the lines are broken out more, but in yours, you're just looking at a summary.
Right, so I'm supposed to remember all this? Like, where's the report for this that you just narrated? Why can't I review this report?
It's what you're seeing. I'm just speaking to it in more detail to highlight some of the key projects that.
Okay, well, I don't have that information. You're telling me and I'm supposed to remember this or write it down?
Okay, Director Vandenberghe, if you wish a supplemental, I really would appreciate if you would preface your remarks by asking for a supplemental and then just be really clear and calm and polite in asking for what you wish.
Well, thank you, and supplemental.
Go ahead.
Yes, if this could be accompanied with a report that instead of the narrative, it would give me a little bit more value to it, and just trying to be respectful. But it's very hard to follow along with your narrative and trying to search the numbers in spreadsheets. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair, I can provide that summary and let you know what amount of grant funding has come in for the Kootenay Lake Partnership and what was carried forward for the other projects. So I can provide that, and I'll send it out to everybody.
Okay, Director Watson.
Okay, thanks. I have a few questions on the budget. First, I want to verify. So again, with the climate action plan, Paris, your time in the climate action plan, there's a percentage that goes through general admin because that's where the climate action plan is being held. So do these salary numbers reflect that? I believe it's 0.75 of your 1 FTE is held in general admin? That's my first question. Sorry, Chair, I have 4, if that's okay.
Thank you through the chair. So my time is distributed 0.75 to S105 and 0.25 to S100.
So the supplemental to that question is we know 60 to 80% of your time has been on climate action plan. So those numbers should be closer to reversed for this budget.
I hear what you're trying to achieve is a bit more clarity on how it's distributed, because we know your time is going to be spent.
Thank you through the chair. There was never a decision by the board to reallocate the funding and redistribute it according to the time. So within the budget, my time was allocated based on last year's how we proceeded last year. And going forward in terms of so that would be a retroactive resolution from the board. And then for 2024, we're anticipating that there'll be a shift in the near future, but we do not know. So again, that would be a recommendation from the board that if time gets redistributed and funding.
So that should have been when we made the motion to move forward with further engagement on the climate action plan. We should have noted at that time, and I would have relied on staff to do so, that the staff person leading this was now moving into a general admin project and out of the sustainability project line. The whole reason why we have your FTE split between two services is to acknowledge when you're working on regional services and not the sustainability services. So I would ask staff to please confer with financial department on that, because that means that service sustainability has paid for 90% of your time on the climate action plan. And I don't think that's very accurate to the actuals. My other questions are.
Just a moment, Director
Sure.
Watson.
So, yeah, if I may, through to the chair, to Director Watson, when the climate action plan, the engagement process was launched, which was, I believe, in August or June. Yeah, and that was something that could have been done at that time, the reallocation of the FTE, which would have been a budget adjustment. Going forward, and because we still have the cap still ready to, the decision on it pending, if the board directs me to reevaluate that salary amount, I can definitely do that before the 2024 budget goes for adoption in March. So it's something that we will wait for your direction on, and then the allocation can be made in this year for the appropriate amount of Paris's time.
Okay. Director Watson, your item 2?
Well, I need to clarify that when we get to the climate action plan on Thursday for the board report, I don't believe the board would direct you to determine where your staff hours rest. Based on the climate action plan outcome, you should be then triggering where does that land and in what service. I don't think that requires a board motion. We're highlighting that her time is spent between different services. So if we direct it to continue, and that's your general admin, you need to alert finances to readjust the budgets accordingly moving forward. So I just want to make that last comment on that item. And then my other ones are for the salaries between 2023 and 2024, that they've gone up about 30,000. Oh, sorry, that's to date. So we are pretty much on par for salaries. I just noticed. So we just don't have 30,000 that's been accounted for in the to date. We have 147 budgeted. So are we anticipating we'll spend 147?
Yeah, through the chair, that's probably what we have to date is what we've probably spent up to December 31st from what when this budget was pulled. I can verify that, but I don't anticipate there will be more money coming out. Let me just double check.
It's okay. I primarily misread the to date, and I thought we'd increase salaries by 30,000. So that's okay.
Yeah, through the chair, we came under in our salaries because for 3 months we didn't have a manager of community sustainability, and so that was part of the reason why we did not have that salary number came down. And to clarify your comment around. Board doesn't direct the allocations, but it was the board that directed how the allocation for the sustainability coordinator originally came about, where a 0.25 FTE. I can make that determination based on whatever decision the board makes on the climate action plan as to what that allocation looks like for 2024. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify why I said that. And that's it.
Okay, Director Watson, point number 3.
Yeah, so for director stipend, the budget is upwards of 17,000, but when I do the calculations of 13 members at about 160 a meeting, that's $12,480 for a year. So is there another 5,000 that is being allocated for other things?
So through the chair, we kept the amount pretty much the same. We came in under in director stipend and expenses for 2023. And that was probably because we missed one meeting. We canceled that one meeting, so that was not charged out. Oh, well, it's the same. It's the same amounts for 2024. In 2023, we allocated director allowance and stipend at $16,900. it's the same for 2024. And 2025 is showing as higher, but that's just the system incrementally increases it for the subsequent years. But I left it at the same amount for 2024.
Okay, it must be some stipend that I'm not thinking of that gets it at that amount. My last question, membership dues and subscriptions. Not sure what those are for, but they're going up. And sorry, contracted services in 2023 was 20,000. For 2024, we have it at 152. Is that the KLP?
So through the chair, yeah, the education and the subscription is mostly for membership for Paris and I on the Planning Institute of BC and attending conferences. So that's what that is for. The 152,000, you're correct. That is mostly for the Kootenay Lake Partnership in addition to the other projects that I mentioned.
Okay,
Okay.
those were my questions. Thanks.
And Director Jackman?
Sure, thank you. Maybe to clarify the math on, we're 13 members at so many meetings equals X dollars, but we have, as I know, agenda prep and all the other stuff that a chair does. So the difference would be the incremental allocation to the committee chair. So I think what Director Watson was doing was multiplying X people times X meetings who got a number. There's also the chair stipend, because it can be quite a little bit of work to sometimes set agendas and roll the follow on. So that'll be the difference in the math.
Thank you for that, Director Jackman. And my apologies, Director Graham, I skipped over you.
Thank you. So through the chair, so Director Watson did ask a lot of the questions I was going to ask, but I'm curious on the contracted services from 2023 for the 20,610 that were not used. What might that have been about?
So the 20, just give me a minute. I will give you that answer in a minute. Yeah, line 5, hold on, Director Beal. Oh, it was for the WGI and KLP. Yeah, so those were funds for the WGI project for Duck Creek and the Kootenay Lake Partnership. So the WGI for Duck Creek hasn't yet launched. And we were going to hire a GIS person to support that project, but we did not because it's not moving. We're waiting for the Yakanuki to provide us direction on how they'd like to move forward with that project. So literally that project did not launch. That money comes back into, well, it was never, that money was actually coming from the LGCAP grant. You'll see in higher up that there was a $32,000 allocation in under the line.
Yep. Transferred from reserves?
Yes, transferred from reserves. So that never got transferred because the project never happened. So that's what's showing up in the budget right now as creating some of that surplus that you see without getting too complex about it.
Okay.
So this is
Thank you.
money
So
that was
that-
unspent. This was money unspent.
Sorry, thank you. I have a supplemental that you just actually led into really well. And that would be the $65,000 reserve prior year surplus. Like that seems like a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what that is all about.
So part of that is the funding that was not spent for the WGI project, which was in total 32,000. In addition, we did not have a manager for community sustainability for about 3 months or so. And then there was one board meeting or one CSLAC meeting that didn't occur. And I think that was it for expenses that would have created that surplus.
Thank you. Can I, through the chair, can I have one more last final question,
Okay.
please? Thank you. So I guess I'm curious why there is no overtime when I think there must have been a fair amount of overtime with all of those community planning, community action plan meetings that were held. And I'm seeing like no, and now we're finding out we're like under budget for salaries, and I'm just wondering where those expenses might be if they're not here.
If I may, so through the chair, that money was allocated not in this service, S-105. That funding and subsequent work on the climate action plan was in S-100. And so you'll see some of the allocation services, A-108, and that's where it was allocated. And I don't believe, maybe I'll get Dan to answer this, that there was any overtime because staff time was adjusted. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the chair, to Director Graham, that's exactly right. So we're very conscious of not going into overtime for any of the climate action plan work. So there's zero overtime that was billed for any of that work. All of the work that was, we adjusted our hours through average agreements so that the staff do get their time off essentially in lieu of the time that they were spending extra on the climate action plan. It's a mechanism of just making sure that we're not spending extra money.
Okay. Okay, and I have Director Cunningham and then Director Hewitt.
Thank you, yes. Just confirm, and I'm glad that that 152,000 was spoken about, because that's basically a carry from 23 to 24 because it wasn't spent.
Not the 152,000 through the, sorry,
Go ahead.
through the chair. That money in 2024 is the sum of the grants that were received this year for the Green Lake Partnership and some of the other projects like the watershed governance project.
Okay, so that's where that came from. But basic though, the actual amount, I would comparing 23 to 24, we don't have, basically, if we take that 152 out, we'd have a 248, which is median, and that's sort of the way it's designed. Okay, I just needed some comment. And secondly, there was discussion about the climate action and the way it's funded and the percentage of which goes here. We're halfway through the project. I think that trying to decide it should be 7% or 27% is immaterial because we're going to be paying for it anyway, whether it's general admin or out of this thing. Let's get the numbers right at the end of the report. That would be a little bit more accurate. Just my comment.
Thank you. Director Hewitt and then Director Watson.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm going back to comments that were made by both Director Jackman and Director Watson regarding the allocation of the project money, the 25,000, and how we essentially painted ourselves in a corner by putting the figures in the draft budget in December, whether our practice should be that we just refer them to budget deliberations in the new year, which then allows us to, once we have the figures and what the potential budget implications are going to be across the entire board spectrum, so we're not all jockeying for position at this time when we know, we're facing 10%, 20% increases across the board. And what I was hearing is that it's now too late. We've given the impression that they're getting the money, so we can't take that back. So we shouldn't be in advance of the year end when we have all the figures available to us, making even soft commitments. Just say, we'll put it in, we'll refer it and not discuss it until this time. We know what their asks are and don't give any firm or even soft commitments that it sounds like people are running with, and then we can't go back.
Staff can respond.
So through the chair, I believe that we may have to amend our terms of reference because I believe it specifies that 25,000 be allocated in the budget, and this has been going on for several years. So if that is the direction that you want us to take in 2025, we can definitely bring the terms of reference. I don't have it in front of me, but I recall that was a direction that we were given to include the 25,000 in the budget and that allocations can be made as people make proposals to us. And so, yeah, if that's what you wish for in 2025, we can definitely, not include that money in there until the decision is made.
Well, that would be my preference, because we're not given the flexibility at this point to do that. In times that it's not a concern, then it's okay. But like, I just think it's unreasonable to, we're being told we can't pull that 25,000 out of requisition at this point.
Yeah. So through the chair, if I may just clarify that, Paris just found the resolution. So it says, resolution 382/18, that the RDCK board support the allocation of S105 funds, quotation marks, grants, leveraging and linking additional funds from external agencies for sustainability initiatives as described in the Community Sustainable Living Committee's terms of reference. So yeah, that basically verifies for me that we did include that in the terms of reference. The amount is still, the amount that was decided on was 25, but it can be adjusted or completely removed. So we'll bring that back to you at the next CSLAC meeting.
That's a discussion that we will need to have in the future.
Yes,
Director
because it
Watson.
shouldn't be, sorry, if I can through the chair, it shouldn't be based just on my say-so. It depends on what the rest of the group feels. If they're happy with the status quo, then just disregard it. I think that needs to be a discussion that this group has.
Okay. Director Watson.
Okay, two things now. One is we have full discretion on this budget at this time. Just because it's in our terms of reference that we will provide $25,000 grants or accept intakes does not mean we are beholden to doing that every year. The budget is in front of us for debate for that reason. You don't need to change the terms of reference. I would not suggest we do that. We can, every time this budget is in front of us, like at this moment, say, I disagree. I don't want to do that. We don't have to do it. That doesn't mean you remove it from our terms of reference. It means you can move forward every year with, yes, we can take intakes. There is no guarantee we're going to do it. So until it's adopted on the March board meeting, everything in our budgets is up to our decision and discretion. If we all agree is what makes the decision. So it's not a terms of reference change. It's simply stating that we can decline these grants at this point. That is our call. There's no obligation to continue with them. So I wanted to, that wasn't the point I was going to make. The other one was what Sangeeta said, a couple of people back conflicted with what I heard when I asked about staff time on the climate action plan. She had indicated to me that we kept the 0.75 in S105 and did not change it according to the climate action plan work. And then someone else asked about the overall budget, and it was indicated it all moved into an allocation service. So those are two conflicting answers. And so I just need to verify, Paris being one of the main, our sustainability planner being one of the main people running the climate action plan, was her time moved into an allocation service that is covered by general admin, or did it remain in service 105 sustainability? And Director Davidoff, oh no, that's not you unmuted, it's someone else, my apologies.
Manager Sedan.
Through the chair, Paris's salaries have been allocated 0.75 in sustainability and 0.25 in S100 and are included in A108, the allocation service. So that never changed last year or this year, I guess last year being 2023. In 2024, depending on where we go with CAP, we can adjust that. So that can be adjusted to accommodate the more effort that will be put into the climate action plan, if that's what the board chooses to do when that's in front of you at the board meeting on Thursday.
So I have Paris, and then I have
And if I may just supplemental to Sangeeta's comments, I think the comment that she was making about A108 was about any climate action expenses. And so if there's been other staff time or overtime, then that's where it would show up. My time, and then there's no overtime, is primarily in SO 105.
Okay, so I have Davidoff, Hanegraaff, and then Graham.
I had a
Davidoff.
supplemental.
Pardon?
I had a supplemental.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll roll that back. Your supplemental and then Director Davidoff.
I wouldn't be if it was clear. I'm sorry. The question that was asked earlier was specifically around staff salaries and where they were resting. And so we've clarified where the sustainability planner's time has rested in 2023. We can still make a financial plan amendment for it to actually be accurate to the service it should be under at this point. I won't make that recommendation. I'll talk to Stuart and Yev about it. But the second point was all the other staff involved in the climate action plan. Was that held in service 105 or was that under general admin? Because the original question that was, I believe, raised by Director Graham was in regards to the salaries and where was the overtime. And that was the answer I heard that said it all went into an allocation service to general admin, which confused the original answer on the sustainability planner's time. So minus the sustainability planner's time, all the other staff time on the CAP engagement work, where is that held? Thank you.
Harris?
Oh, through the chair, it's in the allocation service that comes from S100. So that's A108.
Okay. Director Davidoff.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to point out that the reason we formed this service was to avoid the problem of where to put stuff. And that's why we had this catch-all service. Now what we're doing is we're taking stuff that we're putting into the sustainability service, and then we're allocating some to an allocation service, some to S100, and it's really confusing. Like these allocation services were supposed to be something that was supposed to help us with our budgets, but all it has done is created a lot more confusion for people like me who try to follow it. And I'm sure a whole bunch of other people who go, hold on a second here. We're talking about 3 services here. Why don't we put it all in? If the money comes to this service, then we transfer it out to somewhere else. But the key thing is to have all these breakdowns and 3 services. So I think we need staff to very clearly lay out some reports as to how this stuff works. Because remember why we formed this service, because we didn't have anywhere else to put stuff that dealing with sustainability. So we need clarity. So I was quiet up to now, but I'm getting really frustrated with the conversation because I don't completely understand it. And I was here from day one, from the formation of the service. Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to point out, Director Davidoff, that only part of the reasoning was so that we would have a place to put things that we didn't know where to put them. There also was a much more focused and positive vision for what the sustainability service would be. I agree with Director Watson that this conversation also needs to include CAO Horn and CFO Mellog, as well as Manager Sudan, and that short of that level of oversight, we can chase our tail around for hours on this, I'm sure. So thank you for your comments, Director Davidoff, and I too get confused. We will need to have I think it speaks to a larger issue for the regional district as an organization of how we move money back and forth between services and administration and this, that, and the other thing, and that there needs to be some cohesion about it. Did staff wish to make any more comment on that? I will go to Director Hanegraaff.
Okay, at the risk of stating the obvious, to me, the 25,000 has only ever been a limitation on this committee, not something that we're obliged to hand out, but a limitation on how much we can put out to the various applicants. That's all it is. If there are no worthwhile applicants, no money gets handed out. I don't really know why we've gotten so bogged down on this, but that's my 2 cents worth.
Okay. I think I've gotten to the end of the speakers list. I need, did I get a mover and a second for? Go ahead.
Thank you for the second time. Yes, okay, I appreciate the consent here, but when we're talking about grants, it's really, I know that as several granting organizations, they'll ask the real estate people, provincial government, the trust, and when they're setting up their budget, and they ask us. And they say, and I see in their preliminary budgets done whenever ago, saying, if we get this is how much we will have to operate, this is our probable expenses. That's what they said to us. And if we give a tentative, well, we think maybe we can. They're well aware. Until it's approved at the board meeting, it may be a yes or a no. I think the saying, well, we're not going to tell you a secret till the board meeting comes. That binds them because very often grants match up with other things. I mean, you know, the trust will match up 60% of the amount you've got totally, that kind of thing. So what we're doing right now, I certainly agree with, and I don't think we should change. I think everybody knows the board meeting when it's approved, that's when they get the money. They know it, we know it. It's okay. And if we say ahead of time, we have applied, you know, we think we could possibly give you 10 grand. They know that, and that's what it is. I don't know why all the confusion.
Well, because that's what we do. You're welcome. So can I have a mover and a seconder for this motion that the board approves?
Seconded.
Director Cunningham and Director Hanegraaff. I believe we've already had a lot of discussion. So unless there's something like really critical, Director Jackman?
The technicality of the wording, actually, that we would be moving to the board include community services S105 budget in the draft 2020 financial plan. As we've done with all of our other committees.
Okay, so you have that wording?
Because again, good faith and signaling.
Okay, okay. Shelley, you've got that wording? Can you somebody read it back, please?
That the board include the draft 2024 budget in the
proposed.
Thank you.
In the draft.
Proposed. Okay. I'm going to call the question, and I just would like to hear from those opposed. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, it is carried. And that brings us to item 11. Oh.
I can't make it. It's not on the motion.
Oh. Director Watson, did you have a comment?
Yes, I had one quick comment, Sharon, and I don't intend on sending us down a rabbit hole, but I needed to clarify, we cannot move money between services. What we have done is we've allocated staff time to different services depending on what they're doing. In sustainability, we took Kootenay Boundary Farm Advisors, Central Kootenay Food Policy Council, and the Climate Action Plan and moved those to general admin because they were not specific to the services and sustainability, the areas and sustainability. They were for the full region. So that's the only movement we've made. We're not moving funds between, we're allocating staff time to general admin. So I just wanted to clarify that because it's really clear regional district cannot move money between services. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that. I was forgetting myself. I was still wearing my municipal hat for a moment. Public time. Do we have any public online? And if so, do they wish to ask a question? I'm not seeing anything. So we move to item 12. The next Community Sustainable Living Advisory Committee meeting is scheduled for April 16th, 2024 at 1 p.m. And then we are at everybody's favorite time, adjournment. Who would like to move that? Director Hanegraaff. at 2:57.
And it stopped snowing just in time.
No, it's still snowing.
We get your eyes checked.
No, I'm looking this way.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.